Hi, my name is Corinne Anderson, and I'm the Program Director for the Surgical Technology and Sterile Processing Program here at Lorain County Community College. First, I want to thank those of you that were able to attend our Program Advisory Committee meeting on June 16th. And for those of you that weren't able to make the meeting, this is a good review and summary of the feedback that we received from the June 16th meeting. During the meeting, we went over the agenda, which included welcomes, introductions, the purpose of the Program Advisory Committee, review of the meeting minutes from the previous meeting on June 10th, 2024. We discovered what the BILT model meant, and we did some knowledge, skills, and ability voting. We had roundtable discussions. We went over program updates and professional development, the future of both programs, and program needs. For introductions, we introduced Dr. Denise Douglas, who is the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs and the University Partnership. We introduced Dr. Chris Hirschler, who is the Dean of Health and Wellness Sciences, myself, and the Clinical Coordinator, Shauna Harper. And now I'd like to introduce you to our team, starting with Dr. Chris Hirschler, who is the Dean of Health and Wellness Science, myself, Corinne Anderson, the Program Director, Shauna Harper, the Clinical Coordinator of both Surgical Technology and Sterile Processing, Miranda Dickerson, the Surgical Technology Lead Lab Instructor, Haley Ellison, the Surgical Technology Open Lab Instructor, Jessica Muick, a Clinical Instructor at Metro Health, Don Collier, the Clinical Instructor at UH St. John's, and Samantha Ross, the Clinical Instructor at the VA Medical Center. Next, we have Victoria Baker, who's a clinical instructor at UH Elyria, Vicki Rivera, who's a surgical technology open lab instructor, Matt Hawk, who is a surgical technology open lab instructor, Caitlin Schuler, who is a surgical technology Cleveland Clinic clinical instructor, Brandon Poulin, who is a sterile processing open lab instructor, Michael Coleman, who is a sterile processing open lab instructor, Michael Kahn, who is a sterile processing open lab instructor, Christy LaRosa, who is a Mercy clinical instructor. We have Grace Patchen, who's our surgical technology open lab instructor, Jessica Ortega, who's our surgical technology open lab instructor, Michelle Baker, who is a sterile processing lead lab and lecture instructor, and Donald Kelly, who is a sterile processing open lab instructor. We also have Diane, Charles, Jesse, and Isabella, who are our staff associates that help in the Health and Wellness Division. And last but certainly not least, we have Ashley Carter, who is a surgical technology open lab instructor, and Chrissy Nance, who is a surgical technology clinical instructor at University Hospital's main campus. The purpose of Program Advisory Committee meetings are really building relationships. It's critical to create these relationships between the LCCC faculty, the students, the employers, and the community. And what can you add to our meetings? Your feedback and ideas will provide multiple perspectives. It's valuable, it's current knowledge about the field or industry, and you have a valuable contribution to the success of the school and advancement in the field. We take all of your feedback and make improvements to our program based off of that. A copy of our meeting minutes were distributed during the meeting, and you also have them available to you in your email. Please take a second to review the meeting minutes, and at the end on the survey, you will have an opportunity to approve or deny or abstain from the meeting minutes from the June 10th, 2024 Program Advisory Committee meeting. Last year, our surgical technology and sterile processing programs decided to take part in BILT. BILT stands for the Business and Industry Leadership Team Model, developed by the National Science Foundation, and it was designed to align educators with their programs with businesses that hire their graduates. The key components are KSA validation, which stands for knowledge, skills, and abilities. It will provide continuous engagement, not just a one-time input. At that point in the meeting, we introduced Dr. Ann the Healer. She is a business and education connector and has successfully implemented the BILT model in over 65 educational institutions and projects. The BUILT model is Advisory Committee 2.0. It takes these employer relationships to the next level. It's a structured, repeatable process for any technical program. A model that puts employers in a co-leadership, co-ownership role that greatly increases engagement with college programs. The National Science Foundation established the BUILT model through work with business leaders from across the nation to determine the knowledge, skills, and abilities the workforce-ready graduates will need. This has been implemented at more than 150 colleges in multiple disciplines and is recognized nationally as a leading model for strategic employer engagement. Businesses and faculty play different roles in the BUILT model. Businesses co-lead the programs, they prioritize the knowledge, skills, and abilities, they predict the labor market value demand, and share industry trends and feedback. Whereas faculty attend these meetings and they are active listeners and questionnaires. They cross-reference the knowledge, skills, and abilities and discuss. They diligently try to update the curriculum and provide business feedback regarding the implementation and discuss any challenges that may be happening in the program. Once employers vote for the most prioritized knowledge, skills, and abilities, we will analyze this. We could add or change an item during the discussion, and this is really meant to help faculty align the curriculum based on what the employers want. On the next slide, you will have the opportunity to do the KSA vote via QR code or link provided. In order to appropriately fill out the vote, we would like to go over the prioritization process, ranking your skills from 1 to 4, with 1 being the least important and 4 being the most important. These are skills you are looking for in an entry-level employee coming out of the college's program in the future. Please utilize the QR code to vote. It does take a few minutes for the voting to load. Please be patient, and your feedback is greatly appreciated. During the meeting, the KSA vote was done live, so we were able to see the results of the vote in real time. As you can see here, the highest rated priority was apply safety protocols and handling sharps. You can see that the lowest priority was using instrument tracking and documentation software effectively. There was discussion over all 10 voting items, and it was brought to our attention that some of these KSAs do not directly align with sterile processing. At the conclusion of the KSA voting discussion, we passed out the following slides to the committee members, and we wanted roundtable discussions. The purpose of this was really to gain feedback from our committee members. They discussed topics on enrollment, budget, resources, graduate employer surveys and employment rates, certification pass rates and retention, equipment, clinical resources, curriculum, and in the incubator is the new Associate of Applied Science sterile processing pathway and how that can lead into surgical technology pathways. So we handed all these out. There are questions that go along with each slide, and I will provide the feedback that we received during the roundtable discussion and discuss the data. The first topic we talked about was enrollment. So as you can see in the surgical technology enrollment, we've had a steady incline in enrollment over the past few years. You can see from the data that spring is much lighter than the fall cohorts. I think that's due to students not realizing that we do have a spring start. So we're trying to increase visibility with that. If you look at sterile processing, you can also see that it's steadily increasing. For both programs, we have 2 starts. So we have a cohort that starts in the fall, which is in August, and then we have another cohort that starts in the spring. For surgical technology, we take 16 students each cohort for a total of 32 new students a year. And for sterile processing, we take 20 each cohort, which equals 40 new sterile processing students a year. When Shauna and I took over the program 3 years ago, we realized that the visibility in the community was not there. So we know how important surgical technology and sterile processing is to each and every surgery that's done, but the community doesn't realize that these careers exist. So we decided to start information sessions. We started attending marketing events, high school career fairs. We started videos, flyers. We really wanted to ensure that the community has access to the valuable information about these exciting careers. Along with the slide that we reviewed previously on enrollment, this table was given 3 questions. The first question is, what adjustments to the application process might streamline enrollment and reduce barriers for prospective students in both programs? The table suggested that pre-admission drug testing be done in the Career Explorations course in Surgical Technology, which is a pre-admission course for the program. So that is something that we are currently looking into. The next question is, what strategies can we implement to address the pre-enrollment attrition in the sterile processing program, particularly the 34.8% loss due to failed drug screens or background checks, to ensure more accepted students can start in the program? This group said, same as above, pre-admission drug testing. We are looking into starting these drug testing earlier during their orientation process. So we move their background screens to the day of orientation. So we actually have Jacob Joy, who does the fingerprinting. He comes to our orientation now and does the background checks right there. So we try to break that barrier down of the students having to travel to a different location to get their background checks done. And then the last question, are there opportunities to strengthen community outreach or marketing efforts to sustain the upward enrollment trends observed in both programs, especially given the positive impact of recent events? The table just suggested that we need to keep doing what we are doing. And we plan on attending more events and more conferences. Again, we really want to impress upon the community how important both of these careers are. The next topic discussed was certification pass rates and retention. For surgical technology, we're an accredited program, so we have to meet the thresholds given by ARCS TSA and KHEP. For retention, that means a 60% retention rate. For CST exam sit rate on the first attempt, 100%. So all the students, all the graduates of the program must sit for the CST exam. And then the CST examination pass rate sits at a 70% threshold. As you can see from our pass rates that we have consistently went up since 2021, 2022. We started off at 70%, then 2022, 2023, 75%, 2023, 2024, 75%. And then this year, for the first time, we both our December and our May graduating cohorts had a 100% pass rate on our CST examination. You can see here from the national pass rate that sits at a 77%, we're doing really well. As far as retention rates, this is where we're struggling. As you can see, we've had in the past an 85.7% retention rate in 2022, 2023, and then that steadily declined. 2023 to 2024, 64%, and 2024 to 2025, 58.3%. And we wanted to really dive into why that's happening. So out of the last cohort, we had 10 students that were not retained. So we had 6 withdrawals, which was 60% of the students that were not retained. 4 students for personal reasons, 1 student for a medical reason, and then 1 for family related. We also have 4 failures, 40% of non-retained. That accounts for 40% of the non-retained students. 1 student failed their checkoff. That's in the first semester. That checkoff is, we give that before the students are able to attend clinical. 1 student failed to progress at the clinical site. We do look at all the daily preceptor evaluations, and if the student is not progressing at clinical, we do fail the student at that point. And then we had 2 students fail due to academics, usually not turning in their assignments or not doing well on their exams. I want to say that we do offer open lab hours for our students. So that's specialized tutoring, Monday through Saturday. And we have certified surgical technologists that are able to help the students study, help with their skill assessments, and also instrumentation. So they do have a lot of opportunity to come in and study for their academics. Now let's look at sterile processing's pass rates. So our threshold, we have the same standards that we set for surgical technology for sterile processing. So retention sits at 60%, the CRCST examination sit rate 100%, and then the CRCST examination pass rate at 70%. So you can see that in 2021, 2022, we did have a 100% pass rate. That went down a little bit in 2022, 2023, 90%, and then 2023, 2024, 93%. And then in 2024, 2025, our last cohort that completed the exam was in August, and we had a 100% pass rate. The students that graduated in May are still taking their exam right now, so we will update you with that information. As you can see, we are well above the national pass rate. In the previous 2023-2024 academic year, it was 66.9% as a national pass rate. Again, with our retention rates, we're not doing that great. We did have a 90% retention rate in 2022-2023. That dipped to 48% in 2023-2024 and went up a little bit to 58.6% in 2024-2025. So the total non-retained students, 12 students, 3 were withdrawals, 1 failed a drug screen and background check for a late enrollment. We had 1 with accommodation issues and 1 with personal reasons. We had 9 failures. 1 of those was a no-call, no-show at a paid internship. 6 failed STRP 101, which is the first 8-week course, and 2 failed STRP 120, which is the second 8-week course. We did go in and revamp these courses over the December 2024 break, so we're hoping that some of these tweaks will increase our retention rate. The following questions were asked about the certification pass rate and retention slides. The first question is, how are NACE competencies and professionalism in the surgical technology and sterile processing fields influencing student retention, and what training or support can we provide to address any gaps? The feedback we received is professionalism, career management promotes good communication resulting in critical thinking skills when in the field. We have been working with Abigail Kusabel, who works over in Career Services, and she has now come to our orientation and has provided some NACE competency training to our students. We are also incorporating these NACE competencies into our curriculum. We've especially implemented this really heavy in our career explorations for surgical technology, and we're trying to implement more of that into our sterile processing courses. The next question is, what additional academic support or curriculum adjustments might help reduce the failure rates which are impacting retention? The feedback received was a mock OR day in the career explorations course. We currently do a career exploration workshop where the students come in for surgical technology and they are able to perform some of the tasks that a surgical technologist does, and they write a self-reflection paper in that course stating if they would be a good fit for the program. I think that will help some of our retention rates. And then it says to have different people help with checkoffs, helps deal with pressure with strangers. We just started doing that. Shauna, myself, and Miranda usually do the checkoffs with the students. We always like to have 3 instructors there watching. We are going to start incorporating some of the open lab instructors and clinical instructors, encouraging them to come to checkoffs so the students do have different people in the OR during their 3rd checkoff and to apply a little bit of that pressure when dealing with strangers. The next question is, what preparation strategies or resources can we introduce to sustain the high certification pass rates? Feedback received, Shauna's boot camp. So Shauna has been doing a boot camp every year, or every time they sit for an exam. She does it a couple Saturdays before the exam is taken, and she creates games with the questions. So that has been really successful, and we think that that is helping with the certification pass rates. We do utilize board vitals for our practice exams. And then we try to mimic the environment that the students are going to take their exam in. So they used to take their exam in LC 209. That is a classroom here on at the college. And they recently moved our CST exam to the testing center. So we try to have the students take all of their exams throughout the entire program in that space, so they're used to taking exams on a computer before they were written, and really getting them, hopefully reducing some of their nervousness when they're going in to sit for their national exams. So we do that in both programs. Still Processing, also they take all their exams on a computer, again, just to get used to that idea of sitting for their national exam. Next, we're going to take a look at our graduate and employer surveys that we send out to the clinical sites and to our graduates. So as you can see here, the graduate feedback is high satisfaction with the CST exam and job preparation. The majority rated extremely or very satisfied. As far as the employer feedback goes, most categories averaged above very satisfied. The strengths that they pointed out were aseptic technique and sharp safety. Improvement areas that the employers pointed out are basic sciences such as draping and instrument prep. And some action steps that we can take is strengthen the science foundations and expand hands-on practice opportunities with the draping and instrument prep. As far as Still Processing goes, because this isn't an accredited program yet, we did not have a lot of feedback from the graduates and employer surveys, but we are now using the standard that we use for surgical technology and sending out the same surveys to the Still Processing students and their employers. So from the graduate survey, we did have high satisfaction. Most respondents rated the program very satisfied or extremely satisfied across all categories, particularly in the learning opportunities, instruction on Still Processing procedures, program resources, and hands-on lab training. We received moderate satisfaction for lab resources and professionalism training. Employer surveys are pending. We are sending the first set of employer surveys out within the next 6 months. We did have some quotes on the survey that we wanted to share with you from our graduates. They said that excellent, amazing program, more hands-on practice and time with instruments would improve the program. So we're really excited about having the data from these surveys come back, and for next year we should have a more robust data set to pull from. As far as employment rates go, surgical technology, both cohorts this past academic year received 100% employment rate. We have graduates that went to Southwest General, Metro Health Hospital. We have 5 that went to the Cleveland Clinic Fairview, 1 that went to UH St. John's, 4 at UH Elyria, and 1 went to UH Main Campus. As far as Still Processing goes, we had 6 out of the 8 employed. 1 was pursuing a further education, going into nursing, and 1 has not yet been placed. As far as the May graduates, we have 5 employed out of 9 right now, which does drop that employment rate, but that is because they are just now taking their exam. The combined employment rate for both cohorts right now is 11 out of 17, which is 64.7% overall. We expect that to go up even higher as soon as these students sit for their CRCST exam. First question following these slides are, do employers feel that our graduates are adequately prepared for entry-level roles? The feedback that we received is we need to discuss the interview-appropriate attire and put NACE competencies in checkoffs, and that communication is important. What additional strategies or partnerships can we implement to help graduates secure employment more quickly, especially for those still seeking? So apprenticeship programs, and more internships for students is the feedback that we received. And how can we further integrate soft skills and professionalism into the curriculum to better prepare students for the work environment? We didn't receive any feedback on that one, but I'm going to refer back to putting those NACE competencies into the checkoffs for our students. We are integrating more NACE competencies into their orientation process, into the curriculum, and into that career explorations course. And Abigail from Career Services, I mentioned her earlier, she has also created some scenarios for the students. So we are also utilizing those scenarios for communication and professionalism. For our financial assessment, I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about the budget that the figures presented do not include revenue from the state share of instruction, and the projected amounts are based on previous year's enrollment numbers and reflect the anticipated tuition increase. Please note that the projected year salaries have not been determined and therefore not included in the report. And additionally, the fringe benefit amounts reflected anticipated increase in healthcare cost. So you can see here that our instructional supplies, that's what our accreditation really focuses on. So the past year, 2023-2024 was $23,452. The current year sits at $25,210, and the projected year is sitting at $24,494. And after talking with our budgeting team, it's based off of enrollment, the previous year's enrollment. So the projected year's budget is based off of this past year's enrollment, which was lower in the spring due to only 6 students starting in that spring cohort for surgical technology. So that is what they are recommending for the projected year. For sterile processing, you can see our instructional supplies for 2023-2024 is $9,498. The current year, $17,961, and then the projected year, $10,397. Again, that goes down due to retention and enrollment rates. So we're looking to increase that. Another, I wanted to bring your attention to the capital expenditures in the current year, 2024-2025. That $19,970 was from a bleeding mannequin that we received for surgical technology. And that was a wish list item on it. And we received that due to our program review process. So we were very excited to receive those funds, and we have utilized that Simulab Man in 2 checkoffs, and we really like it. And then professional development. So we were able to utilize our funds, that $2,771 in the current year, to go to the Association of Surgical Technologists Educators Conference. And we were also able to go to the Ohio State AST Conference. We were very excited about that. We do feel that we would need more professional development funds for national conferences, especially for sterile processing, because we have both programs. We would also like to get out to some of the HSPA conferences. Shauna and I are actually presenting at AccredX, so our entrance fee, our registration fee for that is free, so we are able to go to that with no cost. And then Shauna also won at the AST Educators Conference free registration for next year's Educator Conference. So we would only have to pay for one of us in order to go there. So we would like to see a little bit of a more robust professional development budget for sterile processing, as we can see that it sits at 0 currently. The questions that we asked our budget team: based on industry experience, do you believe our current instructional supply budget adequately supports student skill development and align with workforce expectations? The feedback we received is no, there is an increased enrollment, therefore a need for CST-SP budget increase needed for adequate student support. The second question: are there any concerns or suggestions regarding the sustainability of current budgets? The feedback we received is continue promoting enrollment for sustainability of current budgets. Are there any additional investments or equipment you recommend for future budgets that would better prepare students? The feedback we received is professional development needs a budget for both programs, especially sterile processing. As far as our resource assessment goes, we do have plenty of library resources, computers, classrooms. We have an iLoft, and we have information technology, the help desk. So there are a lot of resources that the students can utilize on campus. As for our student support services, I think we as a college do an excellent job in the wraparound support services that we provide to the students. We have the Advocacy Resource Center, which is the ARC, provides emergency aid. We have technology help, food assistance, housing, transportation, legal services throughout, especially with the Ohio Justice Bus, mental health, addiction, and personal counseling through the Care Center, and help for sexual assault or domestic violence. We also have accessibility services that provide accommodations and assistance to the students with disabilities. We have child care, Commodore Kids. We have Commodore Career Closet, which is gently used business attire for students and alumni for job interviews. We have Commodore Cupboard, which is emergency food assistant programs for LCC students. We provide veteran services, suicide prevention resources, LGBTQ plus community crisis intervention. Career services, they help with job searching, job preparation, resume building, mock interview, networking, e-portfolios. We provide, it's called a Stitch of Kindness, which is gently used or new items that we have on a rack downstairs in our classroom. We know what it was like to be students in this program, as Sean and I are both graduates, so we're very passionate about helping these students along on their journey and providing some of these things that they might not be able to afford as they're paying for school. We also work with Ohio Means Jobs. Ohio Means Jobs, because sterile processing and surgical technology are on that top 100 list of jobs that are in demand in Ohio, they do provide extra funds for students that don't get a full Pell Grant. So we do give that information to our students for financial help as well. The Ohio Justice Bus, this is a group of pro bono lawyers that travel on a bus and help students expunge their records in order to work in healthcare. And then we also work with family planning. We do provide some safe sex preventatives in our classroom, and family planning also comes and talks to our students about STIs. As far as our textbooks go, we have updated this past year to all new editions of our textbooks. As far as personnel goes, we would need a full-time faculty member additional to Sean and I. Sean and I are the only two full-time faculty members that are running two programs currently. So we would like to transition the CER, which is a Certified Endoscope or Processing Certificate course, to a permanent fast track program. But we would need that full-time faculty member in order to get that done. We did trial that in the fall of 2024 and realized very quickly that it was way too much trying to do that third program. We would also like to start an associate's degree for sterile processing, and that full-time faculty member would also support that, and sustain lecture, lab clinicals, and open lab coordination. So we are currently, between Shauna and myself, if we're at maximum enrollment capacity, 72 new students annually between SRGT 101, 114, 215, and 230, we would have 184 total. We have 4 certification exams that we give. We have 3 pinning ceremonies a year. We did start the CER experimental course, and we have 2 cohorts for each program for 4 total cohorts a year. So there are a few programs that do that. In the Health and Wellness Science Division, we are one of the few that do it, and the application process we have to do twice a year instead of just once a year. Student feedback also highlights the need for more full-time faculty to reduce overload and support quality instruction. When we received our course evaluations back, that was some of the comments from our students, is stating that yes, we're great instructors, but we do look a little overwhelmed at times. So as you can see here, we have many responsibilities. Shauna and I, we run the application process. We are in charge of the budget. We are in charge of all the documentation for accreditation. We oversee all the students' clinical loggers. We teach all of the courses. So it's a lot that goes into it. We would like to hire a new faculty member to distribute some of this workload and increase the program sustainability. We'd like to start offering that CER program as a permanent fast track program, and then offer the associate's degree in sterile processing. This would expand our sterile processing program by being able to offer the other certificates, such as the Certified Instrument Specialist Certificate and the Certified Healthcare Leadership Certificate. So again, we would really like another full-time faculty member in order to not only sustain the programs, but to grow the programs. The first question in terms of resources is, are there current academic and personal support services, tutoring, advising, career services sufficient to meet the diverse needs of surgical technology and sterile processing students? The feedback received was tutoring specific to surgical tech skills, including medical terminology. I do want to point out that we do offer open lab hours for both the surgical technology and sterile processing programs Monday through Saturday that the students can sign up for 2 hours at a time for those specific tutoring needs. Next question, do you believe students have adequate access to library resources, research tools, textbooks, and reference materials to support their coursework and certification preparation? The feedback received was yes, but remind them during class. And from one of our students that are a part of the committee, they said we could use more time with the instruments. Given the growing demand of both programs, do you believe we have enough qualified faculty to effectively support student learning and clinical supervision? The feedback received is no, we need more. These two fields are growing tremendously and require very specialized training, and it takes extra help to ensure all students receive the correct information and training without being rushed. I do want to point out that we do have a student resource site for both the surgical technology and sterile processing program that provides them with all these available resources. For our equipment, we do have adequate equipment for both the sterile processing and surgical technology labs. We were able to obtain a donated flexible endoscope for our sterile processing program. The picture in the middle there is that Simulab man that I talked about during the budget that actively bleeds. So we were able to obtain that through our program review. And then on the right-hand side there is the Anatomage tablets. So we were able to save $10,000 in our budget from last year, and we were able to purchase these Anatomage tablets, which are cadavers that are scanned into the iPads, and we're able to dissect down the anatomy layer by layer. For our computer and instructional resources, we do utilize Cengage or MindTap for online homework. Canvas is our learning management system, and we do use WebEx for office hours and for meetings. PowerPoint presentations, we also use Kahoot. We do podcasts. We have videos of our skill assessments and checkoffs. We also utilize different surgical videos. We do have hands-on surgical workshops. There's 16 weeks in the lab with 3 to 4 checkoffs for each program. And we started implementing guest speakers. So Dr. Zali, who is a retired vascular surgeon, is able to come in and speak with the students. He also helps out in our workshops. We have Stryker come in, Medtronic, career services that help with career preparation, such as resume building, e-portfolio, and mock interviews. We have graduates of the program come and mentor our students. And then we recently had a guest speaker, one of the authors from the book we use in our sterile processing program, The World of Surgical Instruments, Rick Schultz. So he gave a 2-hour lecture to both our sterile processing and surgical technology students. The questions that were asked of this group are, what industry standard resources or technologies should we consider acquiring to ensure our program remain competitive and adequately equipped for student success? The feedback received was virtual reality and also utilizing AI. We are currently in the process, we did put in for capital a new virtual reality surgery simulator that can be used in both sterile processing and surgical technology for instrument identification and passing instrumentation. The next question, are the simulation resources such as instrument trays, sterilizers, OR setups sufficient for students to build confidence in clinical readiness? We didn't have any feedback on that question. The next question, would your organization be interested in partnering with us to provide equipment donations, surplus instruments, or outdated but functional items for student training? The feedback we received is a committee member stated he has an ultrasonic cleaner he is willing to donate to the program, and we are now currently in the process of obtaining that donation now. So we are very excited, and thank you for that donation. We're really lucky to have such great healthcare facilities in Northeast Ohio. We have clinical affiliations with University Hospitals, Mercy, the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, Firelands, Fisher Titus, Southwest General, and the VA. We are actively pursuing an affiliation agreement with the Crystal Clinic right now. We are actually meeting with them in a few days to go over the affiliation agreement. So we're hoping to offer that clinical site next year. And we also have exciting news from the Cleveland Clinic that they are starting to offer internships specifically for Lorain County Community College surgical technology students only. So we're very excited to start that internship relationship with the Cleveland Clinic. In this slide, you can see the top portion is what our students see as far as our clinical logger goes. This is an Excel spreadsheet that Sean and I have worked on continuously, and this is a summative log that will add up all their cases. So in order for the CST exam, they need 120 surgical cases, 30 general cases, and then the 90 specialty cases. For our program specifically, we require 140 surgical cases as a graduation requirement. In the fall of 2024, we had 19 clinical spots. The spring of 2025, we needed 20 clinical spots, and we are sitting at 20 clinical spots for the summer of 2025 as well. So we are currently at 17. So the top portion of this slide, this is what our summative clinical logger looks like for surgical technology. This is where the students will log all of their surgical cases, and it will automatically add all those numbers up for them. So in order to sit for their CST exam, they have to have 120 surgical cases, 30 of them being general surgery cases and 90 being specialty cases. As a graduation requirement for LCC's program, we require 140 surgical cases. We don't want to meet just the minimum requirements. So for the fall of 2024, we had 19 clinical spots. Students were at 19 different clinical spots. The spring of 2025, students were at 20 clinical spots. And for the summer of 2025, which we're currently in, we are at 17 clinical spots. So we're currently filling 17 clinical spots at 9. As far as our clinical resources, at the top of this page, you can see our clinical logger. So this is what the students utilize to log their surgical cases. This is a summative log, so it will automatically add up all of the cases once the student types them in. In order to sit for the CST exam, the students need 120 surgical cases, 30 of those being general surgery cases and 90 of those being specialty cases. Our program requires 140 surgical cases because we don't want to be just meeting that minimum case requirement. As far as the clinical spots go, in fall of 2024, we utilized 19 clinical spots. The spring of 2025, we utilized 20 clinical spots. In the summer of 2025, we utilized 17 clinical spots. When we're running at full capacity, we will be requiring 32 clinical spots. At the top of this page, you're going to see our summative clinical logger for the sterile processing program. You can see that they have to input the hours that they work in each category below, and then that automatically totals at the bottom. And they know their goals there too for each area that they need to be in. The CRCST certification requires 400 hours of hands-on experience, well, whether that's in a clinical or an internship capacity. We are currently, our maximum enrollment capacity is 40 students. We are currently at 9 clinical sites, filling 9 clinical spots. In the summer of 2024, we had 11 clinical spots. The spring of 2025, we had 11 clinical spots. In the summer of 2025, which we're currently in, we are at 9 clinical spots. We've observed a decline in surgical case volumes across several of our clinical sites. We wanted to inquire about this decline with our clinical partners. We asked them a few questions about this. Has your facility experienced similar trends? The feedback was yes, we have also staffing challenges. What factors might be contributing to lower case numbers? The feedback we received is the economy, fear of job loss, overflooded medical facilities per capita, and the ambulatory surgery centers favorably are shifting volumes. So many more cases are being shifted over to those surgery centers. Are there strategies your facility is using to address this? The feedback received is shifting the service and volumes, recruiting new surgeons, that is in progress, increase hospital reputation by performing highest quality for patients, utilizing those patient surveys, and adding new surgeons and PCPs to refer patients. We also asked what qualities or training should we prioritize in preceptors at clinical sites to enhance student success, ensure a positive experience during hands-on training, and promote approachability to student support, learning, and confidence. The feedback received was CST students should come in ahead of time to review their assignments for their cases. We try to get their cases to the students the night before. Sometimes that's not possible given the healthcare facility. We also had feedback about language barrier issues as English is a second language. As of right now, HSPA and NBSTESA only offer their national exams in English. And the clinical partners also ask for feedback from students after completion of the clinical hours. So we are going to start surveying the students at the end of their clinical rotations to give us feedback that we can then provide back to our clinical partners. Our next topic is surgical technology and sterile processing curriculum. For surgical technology, there are some pre-admission courses that the students must complete before being accepted into the program. One of those is that career exploration in surgical technology. We have Introduction to Patient Care, Introduction to Medical Terminology, Anatomy and Physiology 1, College Composition 1, and then Math 158 or 168, and their SDEV 101. I did want to note that if a student is currently in sterile processing as CRCST, they can get PLA for SRGT 110. And if the student is a current STNA, they can waive that for ALHN 113. After their pre-admission courses and they're accepted into the program, they'll start with their first semester of courses. At this time, they would have to take Anatomy and Physiology 2 if they haven't taken it already. They would also take Surgical Sterilization Methods, which is an 8-week online course with the exception of one day where they come in for a workshop day to go through the journey of a surgical instrument and learn how to decontaminate, sterilize, and check the instrumentation. They also have an 8-week course, Surgical Pharmacology, where they have a drug card project, and they will utilize this throughout the other 3 semesters for their pharmacology. And then they have their full-term Introduction to Surgical Technology course. This involves a lecture and a lab. Then they'll move on to their clinical portion. So that's SRGT 114. They go over the first 7 surgical specialties. And at this point, they would also want to take general microbiology. Their 3rd semester, they would have their surgical procedures, the second portion. So they would have surgical specialties 8 through 14. And they would also take general pathology at this point. In their very last semester, they have Advanced Surgical Technology Concepts, and this is a review from semester 1 all the way through. And this goes over anatomy and physiology, medical terminology, surgical pharmacology, sterilization methods, and all 14 surgical specialties. At this point, they would also take Introduction to Sociology or Psychology and microcomputer applications. Sterile processing curriculum has 2 different pathways. They have a short-term certificate or a 1-year certificate, and the names may be a little deceiving because they're the same amount of time. They're both 2 semesters long. The only difference is that the short-term certificate is just the sterile processing courses and that SDEV 101. So they have STRP 101, which is the first 8 weeks, STRP 120, which is the second 8 weeks. Both of those courses have a lecture and a lab component. The second semester, they will be placed into a clinical, which is STRP 113. The students have an opportunity to obtain employment, and that they would then be moved into that internship site, which is STRP 115. Or if they cannot get an internship, they will stay at the clinical and they will just roll right into that STRP 114 course. For the 1-year certificate, this is geared towards students. They're going to utilize this as a stepping stone into an associate's degree program. So they can take these courses and it's going to give them the pre-admission courses that they're going to need for the other allied health programs pre-admission courses. So it's pretty nice for the students that are using this, again, as a stepping stone into an associate's degree. We asked questions to the committee about our curriculum for both programs, and the feedback we received was to remove the microcomputer applications, which is at CISS 121, and add CMMC 151, which is oral communications, and do the same thing with the sterile processing program. Also with the sterile processing program, they wanted to replace that biology 115, and I am suggesting replacing that with anatomy and physiology 1. For the other 3 questions, they did not have any feedback for. If you'd like to provide feedback for those 3 questions, please do so on the survey. Currently in the incubator, we are presenting our institution with the Associate of Applied Science in Sterile Processing. This will give us the opportunity to allow the students to get all 4 certificates while being able to utilize financial aid for those. So how we planned out the associate's degree, that 1-year technical certificate for sterile processing that we already currently offer, they would take that their first year and gain their CRCST. Then their second year, they would come back and they could take the CIS course, interpersonal communication, general microbiology, and bioethics. And then in the last semester, they could take their certified healthcare leadership, general pathology, intro to psychology, and principles of management. So the total credit hours would be 64 to 65. We also included the general education that is needed, which is English composition, mathematics, and at least 6 hours across arts and humanities, social and behavioral sciences, and natural sciences. And we have a minimum of 30 credit hours for their technical coursework. Here we wanted to provide the career ladder for sterile processing and how that can stack into the surgical technology associate degree, or how that would look if we proceeded with the associate's degree for sterile processing. So you can see the sterile processing pathway. They could get the certified endoscope processing, the CER, in the summer between their first and second year. If they're going on to the associate's degree, they can get their CIS and CHL, which would be included in that associate's degree. And then if the student wishes, they can utilize a university partnership and get a bachelor's in healthcare administration, and then a master's utilizing that university partnership in healthcare administration. If they wanted to go the surgical technology pathway, they could use their CRCST as PLA for the SRGT 110 course, and move on to the associate's degree of applied science in surgical technology, and then utilize our university partnership. We do have an affiliation with Cleveland State University. They have tailored their bachelor's degree program to our program specifically, which I'm going to show you on the next slide, for a bachelor's of science in health science. And then you can utilize the university partnership for a master's degree. Right now, Baldwin Wallace has a physician's assistant program. Cleveland State University did supply their curriculum to us. As you can see in the blue there, that's our sequence here at LCCC. And then on the right-hand side are the CSU degree requirements. So this is a good pathway for the surgical technology students to utilize a university partnership and get their bachelor's degree. Updates since the last Program Advisory Committee meeting include service learning. We added service learning for the sterile processing program. We went to MedWorks with the sterile processing students. You can see that in the bottom left-hand picture there. That's one of our students. And they were able to earn their service medallion and certificate. So we're very excited to continue that on in this new academic year. We received a new operating room table and Anatomage tablets from our program review that we completed last year. We also received that trauma surgical simulator as well. We started going to the coroner's office for autopsies. We invited new guest speakers. We're working on NACE competencies. We've created a pathways page for all health and wellness science. Dr. Hirschler and I have been working on that pathways page to help all the students in the health and wellness division, and that is modeled after the resource pages that I created for surgical technology and sterile processing. We do have open lab hours, which is specialized tutoring for our students. We are marketing, as you can see in that middle picture there. We do try to hand out as many items as possible, again, and be visible in the community. We also create grad stoles that Sean and I gift to the students before graduation. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner an example of our graduation stoles. We do have sterile processing stoles and surgical technology. We are working with CCF on our first internship with them for our surgical technology students, and we're very excited about that. We have added review workshops to sterile processing, and we're currently working on the curriculum updates for the 7th edition core curriculum for surgical technology. For faculty professional development, Lorain County Community College offers 1HE courses and pathways, LinkedIn Learning. We also have faculty development days in a teaching and learning center that is available to all faculty. Conferences that Sean and I have attended this past academic year include the Ohio Association of Two-Year Colleges in 2024, the 2025 AST Educators Conference in New Orleans, the 2025 AST Ohio State Assembly in Columbus, and we are going to attend the Ohio Association of Two-Year Colleges at Kent State University, and we're also going to be presenting on sterile processing at the National Surgical Technology Conference. That's at CREDX in Louisville, Kentucky. We're also going to be attending the AST Educator Conference in 2026 in Nashville, Tennessee. We would love to go to the AST National Conference in 2026, the HSPA Annual Conference in Baltimore, and the NEO CSA in October. For the future of the program, we're hoping to start that associate's degree for sterile processing. We are currently updating all of our documentation to the 7th edition core curriculum for surgical technology, as our program learning outcomes and course learning outcomes were approved by Curriculum Council. We're going to continue our community outreach. We're hoping to obtain a VR surgical simulator. We would love to start mission trips and start scouting for those mission trips in 2026. And we'd like to explore more internships and apprenticeships. Our surgical services program needs a full-time faculty member to sustain both programs and start that associate's degree and CER fast track program. We're always in need of different instrumentation, stapling devices and reloads, suture, whether it's expired or not, implant trays, additional anatomy models, a tourniquet machine and cuff, a pneumatic tourniquet, a child mannequin for peds, any implants that have been expired, an automated endoscope or processor, which we're currently working with Avon Cleveland Clinic for a donation for that, flexible endoscopes, any disposable supplies such as packs, PPE, chemical indicators, biological indicators, peel packs, gowns, gloves. We also would love an ortho helmet, whether it works or not, just to show students how to put on the hood for an ortho case. A microscope would be great, an older microscope to show the students how to drape that. A robot, again, showing the students how to work the robot arms and how to drape the robot. And a new patient cart, as our wheels are not working on our patient cart. And we utilize that to show the students how to do a patient transfer from the cart over to the operating room table and back. I want to sincerely thank you for all being a part of the recording today and for your continued support of our program. Your input is truly valued and it makes a meaningful impact on the success of our students. As a reminder, I kindly ask that you please complete the survey that is attached here in the QR code. Your feedback helps us improve and strengthen the program year after year. And per our accreditation standards, as long as you viewed the meeting recording and submitted your feedback via the survey, we are permitted to count your attendance, and I will document that accordingly. And just as a quick note, commencement is our favorite day of the year. Seeing our students cross that stage is a proud and emotional moment for all of us, and we're so grateful for the role that you play in helping them get there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next year.